I gave her my only diary, filled with poems written in tears. But when she read the first page, she tore it apart saying another man's words already belonged to her heart. I'm writing this because I need someone to know what I did. What I became. Maybe it'll stop someone else from making the same mistake that destroyed everything I ever loved. It started 3 months before our wedding. Sarah had been working late again, stressed about her promotion at the marketing firm. I'd been freelance writing for 2 years, barely making ends meet while she carried us financially. The guilt ate at me daily. We're enough, she'd say when I'd apologize for another rejection letter. We're building something together. But I didn't feel like enough. That felt like dead weight. That's when Emma messaged me on LinkedIn. We'd gone to college together, and she was now some hotshot creative director in Medium. She wrote. Always had a way with words. Coffee sometime. I should have said no. Should have shown Sarah the message. Should have remembered that I had a woman who believed in me when no one else did. Instead, I said yes. The coffee happened on a Tuesday. Sarah was pulling another 12-hour day, and I convinced it was just networking. Professional development. Emma looked incredible, all sharp blazers and confidence I'd never possessed. Or on freelance, she said, leaning across the small cafe table. I could get interviews at agencies that would triple income. She touched my hand when she said it. Just for a second. But I didn't pull away. Sarah must be proud of, Emma said, but her eyes said something else entirely. Yeah, I lied, she is. But Sarah wasn't proud. She was exhausted, worried, carrying both of us while I played at being a writer. And sitting across from Emma, I felt like someone I'd forgotten I could be. Someone successful. Wanted. The text started that night. Great meeting today. Then daily check-ins about job opportunities that never materialized. Then late night messages when Sarah was asleep beside me. Do ever wonder what would have happened if we'd gotten together in college? Emma texted at 1 a.m. on a Thursday. I stared at my phone for 20 minutes. Sarah's breathing was steady next to me, trusting and peaceful. Her engagement ring caught the light from my screen. Sometimes. I typed back. That's the moment. Right there. That's when I chose to betray the only person who'd ever truly loved me. The emotional affair lasted 6 weeks. Hours of texting, video calls when Sarah was at work. Emma made me feel brilliant, successful, desirable. She laughed at jokes Sarah had heard 1,000 times. She called me credibly talented and too good for small town. I started lying constantly. Client called. Need to research at the library. Each lie made the next one easier. Sarah noticed. Of course she did. Seemed different, she said one evening, curled next to me on our thrift store couch. Distant, just stressed about the wedding costs. I said, not looking from my phone where Emma was telling me about her corner office with floor-to-ceiling windows. We could elope. Sarah offered quietly. I don't need a big wedding, I just need. The guilt should have stopped me right there. Should have made me confess, beg forgiveness, delete Emma's number. Instead, I felt annoyed. Trapped. Like Sarah was small town thinking holding me back from the Emma's offering. God, I was such a fool. The night it became physical. Emma was in town for a business meeting. She texted me from her hotel bar. Sarah was at her sister's bachelorette party 2 hours away. One drink, Emma wrote. For old times. I told I was just being polite. That nothing would happen. That I could have a drink with an old friend without it meaning anything. I knew I was lying to even as I walked into that hotel lobby. Emma was at the bar in a red dress that cost more than I made in a month. She hugged me too long. Her perfume nothing like Sarah's vanilla body spray that I'd grown to love. Look good, she said, and I believed her because I wanted to. 3 drinks became 5. Her hand found my knee. Sarah's lucky, she whispered, but her tone suggested Sarah didn't deserve me. When she asked if I wanted to see her room, I said yes. Walking to that elevator, I thought about Sarah. About how she'd defended my writing to her parents. How she'd eaten ramen for months so I could buy a decent laptop. How she'd said yes when I proposed with a ring I could barely afford. Tears in her eyes like I'd given her the world. I thought I got all of that, and I got in the elevator anyway. The betrayal lasted 2 hours. 2 hours that would destroy 5 years of love, trust, and shared dreams. 2 hours that would turn the woman I'd planned to marry into a stranger who couldn't look at me without flinching. When it was over, Emma rolled away like it meant nothing. This was fun, she said, already reaching for her. Fun again when I'm back in town. That's when it hit me. This wasn't love. This wasn't even attraction. This was just ego and stupidity, and throwing away everything real for something that felt good for a moment. I drove home in silence, my engagement ring burning on my finger like evidence. Sarah wouldn't be back until morning. I could shower, change the sheets, pretend nothing happened. I could keep lying. But when I walked into our apartment, our shared space filled with photos of us laughing and dreaming together, I knew I couldn't live with what I'd done. Sarah came home the next morning glowing from her sister's party, full of stories and excitement about our own wedding in 3 months. I missed, she said, kissing me like I was her whole world. And I broke. Sarah, I said, my voice cracking, I need to tell something. The light in her eyes died before I even said the words. I told her everything. The coffee, the texts, the lies, the hotel room. I watched 5 years of love and trust crumble in real time across her beautiful face. She didn't scream, didn't throw things. She just sat very still and asked one question. Why? I tried to explain. The pressure I felt. The inadequacy. How Emma made me feel successful. How I'd convinced I deserved more. Sarah listened to every pathetic excuse, then said the words that still haunt me. I never asked to be more than were. I loved exactly who were. But apparently that wasn't enough for her. She was right. She'd loved me completely. And I'd decided her love wasn't valuable, because it came without conditions. She moved out that day. Took only her clothes and the photo of us from our first date. Left the engagement ring on the kitchen counter like it meant nothing. That was 8 months ago. I haven't seen her since. I know she's doing well. Mutual friends post pictures sometimes. She got the promotion. She's traveling, she's smiling again, but it's different now. Guarded, the open, trusting happiness I fell in love with is gone. Emma never called. Never texted. When I reached out a week later, desperate and broken, she seemed confused that I expected anything more. It was just a bit of fun, she said. We're taking this way too seriously. I'd destroyed my entire bit of fun. Now I sit in my studio apartment, eating takeout alone, wondering how I convinced that momentary validation was worth wanted unconditional love. Wondering how I became the kind of man who could betray the best thing that ever happened to him. I keep thinking about what Sarah said that last morning. How she'd never asked me to be more than I was. How her love had been freely given, no strings attached, and I'd thrown it away because I thought I deserved something better. There is nothing better than being loved completely by someone who sees all flaws and chooses anyway. I learned that too late. The wedding invitations are still in a box in my closet. 200 elegant cards announcing a future that will never happen because I chose 2 hours of selfish gratification over 5 years of genuine partnership. Sometimes I draft messages to Sarah. Apologies, explanations, promises to be better. But what's the point? Can't unfray an egg. Can't unbreak a heart. Can't uncheat on someone who trusted with everything. I made my choice in that hotel elevator. Now I get to live with it for the rest of my. The worst part isn't the loneliness. It isn't the guilt or the shame or even losing Sarah. The worst part is knowing that I became exactly the kind of person I used to judge. The kind of person who throws away something real for something meaningless. I used to wonder how people could cheat on someone they loved. Now I know. Tell lies until believe them. Convinced deserve more. Mistake someone's unconditional love for being taken for granted, and then lose everything, and realize that what had was exactly what needed all along. But by then, it's too late. The person who loved is gone, and they're not coming back. Not because they don't love anymore, but because they love themselves too much to accept someone who would treat their heart so carelessly. Sarah deserved so much better than me. She deserves someone who sees her love as the gift it is, not the consolation prize I treated it as. I hope she finds him. I hope he's everything I wasn't. I hope he values what I away. I hope he's nothing like the man I became that night. 6 weeks after Sarah left, her sister Maya called me. I thought maybe, just maybe, Sarah wanted to talk. That she'd realized we could work through this. I was wrong. Stay away from the coffee shop on 5th Street, Maya said, her voice ice cold. Sarah works there now on weekends. She doesn't want to see Pine. Maya, please. I just want to apologize properly. I want to make feel better. She me off. Done enough damage. That's when I learned Sarah had quit her job. The promotion she'd worked toward for 2 years. The one that was supposed to secure our future together. She'd walked away from it all. Her boss had been understanding. When she explained she needed a fresh start in a different city, she'd moved 3 hours away. Started over completely. Because staying in the same town where we'd built our together was too painful. I'd cost her everything. Her job. Her home. Her sense of safety in familiar places. But Maya wasn't done destroying me. Do know what she did the night told her. Maya's voice shook with rage. She came to my place and for an hour. Couldn't stop shaking. Said she felt like she didn't know it all. Like the person she'd loved for 5 years was just a lie. I sat there holding the phone. Remembering Sarah's face that morning. How she'd gone completely still. How she'd asked just one word. Why? I'd thought her calm reaction meant maybe it wasn't that bad. That maybe we could heal from this. I was such an, she hasn't eaten a full meal since. Maya continued. Lost 15 pounds, has nightmares. Keeps asking what she did wrong, what she could have done differently. She didn't do anything wrong. I whispered. I know that. But she doesn't. Broke something in her, and I know if it'll ever heal. After Maya hung, I drove to 5th Street anyway. Not to approach Sarah, just to see her. To make sure she was okay. She wasn't. Through the coffee shop window, I watched the woman I'd loved become someone else entirely. Her hair was shorter, severe. She'd lost weight Maya hadn't mentioned, her clothes loose. But worse than the physical changes was how she moved. Sarah used to bounce when she walked, always eager for the next moment. Now she moved carefully, like the world might hurt if she wasn't vigilant. She smiled at customers, but it was professional, guarded. Nothing like the open joy she used to radiate. A guy about our age came in, clearly interested in her. He was good looking, well dressed, polite. Everything I'd convinced I was when I met Emma. But when he asked for her number, I watched Sarah's whole body tense. Watched her wrap her arms around herself protectively. Watched her decline with the kind of fear that comes from having trust shattered completely. That's what I'd done. I hadn't just broken her heart. I'd broken her ability to trust anyone with it again. I drove home and drank until I couldn't see straight. The worst part about destroying someone love is how the world keeps moving. Friends still expect to show to things. Family still calls asking how we're doing. Clients still need work done. But everything feels hollow. Every joke falls flat. Every success feels meaningless because the person want to share it with is gone. I started seeing a therapist. Dr. Chen was patient, professional, and completely unimpressed by my self-pity. Keep talking about how guilty feel. She said during our 3rd session. But guilt is still about. What about responsibility? I take full responsibility. I insisted. Because keep mentioning how Emma pursued. How work stress affected judgment. How inadequate felt in relationship. Those all sound like excuses. She was right. Even in therapy, I was still trying to justify what I'd done instead of simply owning it. The question isn't why I did it. Dr. Chen continued. The question is, what kind of person do you want to be moving forward? Because right now, or the kind of person who destroyed someone who loved, is that who want to stay? That question haunted me for weeks. Meanwhile, the practical consequences kept piling. Our mutual friends had to pick sides. Most picked Sarah, which was the right choice. But it meant losing people I'd known for years. Game nights I was no longer invited to. Birthdays where my absence was a relief to everyone. Tant la best man was the hardest loss. I can't look at the same way, he told me over coffee. Sarah helped me move 3 times. Brought soup when Lisa was sick. Treated like we're some kind of hero. And it all away for what? A stranger in a hotel room. I know I messed. Tom laughed bitterly. Didn't mess. Made a choice. Chose to text another woman back. Chose to lie to Sarah, over and over. Chose to get in that elevator. He was right. Each step had been a choice, a deliberate decision to prioritize my ego over my relationship. The Tom I thought I knew wouldn't have done this, he said. Other I never really knew. Or not the person I was friends with anymore. He left without saying goodbye. That night I found stalking Sarah's social media for the first time. She'd blocked me on everything, but I could see her through mutual friends' posts. She looked terrible. Thin, hollow-eyed, jumpy. In one photo from her new city, she was forcing a smile at some work event. But her eyes looked haunted, like she was somewhere else entirely. The comments were full of people asking if she was okay. Her college roommate wrote, "Look too thin, honey. Please take care of Point." Her mom commented, "Call me. I'm worried." I'd done that. I'd turned a vibrant, confident woman into someone her family worried about. Someone who looked like she was barely holding on. But the photo that destroyed me was from her sister's actual wedding, which had happened the month before. Sarah was maid of honor, standing next to Maya in a beautiful blue dress. She should have been glowing, celebrating love and new beginnings. Instead, she looked like she's in physical pain. Her smile was vacant, her posture defensive. In every candid, she was looking down or away, like she couldn't bear to watch someone else's happiness. The caption read, "So grateful for my sister, who still showed and smiled for me even though she's going through the hardest time of her." Even at her sister's wedding, Sarah was performance art, pretending to be okay for everyone else's sake while dying inside. Because of me. Because I'd decided that 5 years of unconditional love wasn't enough. Because I'd wanted to feel special for 2 hours. I screenshot that photo and stared at it for hours. This broken version of the woman who used to light rooms just by walking into them. Who used to laugh so hard at my jokes that she'd snort. Who used to trace patterns on my chest while we talked about our future. Our future. The house we'd planned to buy. The kids we'd talked about naming. The trips we'd wanted to take. That we were going to build together. All gone. All destroyed. I'd convinced I deserved more than the best thing that ever happened to me. I kept going to therapy. But progress felt impossible. How to forgive for becoming someone despise? How to move forward when of someone so badly that they can't function in the world anymore? Healing isn't about forgetting what did. Dr. Chen told me, it's about understanding why did it so never do it again. It's about becoming someone who could never make those choices. But what if I can't? What if this is just who I am? They'll keep hurting people, and eventually, I'll be completely alone. The isolation was already crushing. Weekends stretched endlessly with nothing but my guilt for company. I'd scroll through my phone, looking for someone to text, but every contact felt contaminated by what I'd done. My parents knew something was wrong but not what. Seems sad, honey. My mom said during our weekly call. Is everything okay with Sarah? I couldn't tell them. Couldn't admit that I'd thrown away the daughter-in-law they'd already claimed as family. That there would be no grandchildren from us, no holidays with Sarah's infectious laugh filling their house. So I lie again. We're taking a break. Figuring some things out. More lies. Always more lies. Even when the truth would have been a relief, work became my only escape, but even that felt hollow. I'd land a new client, and think about calling Sarah to celebrate. I'd see a funny meme and reach for my phone to send it to her before remembering she'd blocked my number. Everything reminded me of what I'd lost. The grocery store where we used to shop together. Arguing playfully about which pasta sauce to buy. The park where I'd proposed, getting down on one knee by the fountain where we'd had our first kiss. The movie theater where we'd seen dozens of films, Sarah always crying at the emotional parts while I pretended to be too cool for tears. Our entire city was a graveyard of memories. 3 months after she'd moved away, I got a package in the mail. No return address, but I recognized Sarah's handwriting immediately. Inside was every gift I'd ever given her. The necklace from our first Valentine's Day. The book of poetry I'd inscribed with a love note. The framed photo from our trip to the mountains where we'd talked about getting married someday. At the very bottom was the engagement ring. No note. No explanation. Just the physical remnants of 5 years returned like evidence of a crime. I held that ring for hours, remembering the night I'd proposed, how Sarah had cried happy tears, and me like I'd given her the universe. How we'd called her parents at midnight to share the news. How she'd worn it every single day until the morning I broke her heart. Now it was just an expensive piece of metal. A symbol of promises I'd destroyed. That night, I finally wrote Sarah a letter. Not asking for forgiveness or trying to explain again, just acknowledging what I'd done and what it had cost both of us. I know we'll never read this. I wrote, but I need to know that I understand now. I didn't just cheat on. I broke something fundamental about how see the world. I made question own worth, own judgment, ability to trust anyone. I convinced that what I did was about my own insecurity and inadequacy, but that's not true. It was about selfishness. About deciding that my momentary desires mattered more than long-term well-being. I don't expect forgiveness. I don't deserve it. But I want to know that losing taught me what love actually means. It means putting someone else's heart before own comfort. It means choosing them every single day. Especially when it's hard. I failed at love with. But maybe I can learn to be better for the next person who's brave enough to trust me. Maybe I can honor what we had by making sure I never destroy else the way I destroyed. But I never sent the letter. What was the point? Sarah was trying to heal, to rebuild her without me in it. The kindest thing I could do was let her. But keeping that letter on my desk reminded me daily of who I'd become. And who I needed to stop being. The isolation was getting worse. Entire weekends would pass without me speaking to another human being. I'd order groceries online to avoid running into anyone who might ask about Sarah. I'd declined every social invitation, until people stopped inviting me. I was becoming exactly what I deserved, completely alone with the consequences of my choices. But loneliness wasn't the worst part. The worst part was realizing that I'd probably never loved them the way I'd loved Sarah. That kind of deep, comfortable, taken for granted love only happens once. And I destroyed it for 2 hours with a woman whose last name I didn't even know. Every day felt like punishment. And every day, I knew I deserved worse. 1 year after Sarah left, I saw her again. I was at a bookstore in the city where I'd grown 3 hours from where she'd moved. I thought I was safe. Thought I'd never run into her there. I was wrong. She was in the poetry section. Which should have been my first clue that the universe has a cruel sense of humor. She looked different. Better physically but fundamentally changed. Her hair was longer now. And she'd gained back some weight. But she moved through the world like someone who'd learned it could her without warning. She saw me before I could escape. For a moment, we just stared at each other across the narrow aisle. A year of separation collapsed into nothing. All the therapy, all the supposed healing, all the progress I thought I'd made evaporated instantly. She looked beautiful. She looked broken. She looked like a stranger wearing Sarah's face. "Hi," she said quietly, "hi." We stood there for an eternal 30 seconds before she spoke again. "I come here sometimes. When I visit my cousin, I didn't think." She trailed off, clutching a book of poetry like a shield. "I'm sorry, I can leave. I didn't know'd be here." "It's fine." But her voice said it wasn't fine. Nothing about this was fine. I should have walked away. The space she needed. Instead, I heard asking, "How are?" She laughed, but there was no humor in it. "How do you think I am?" "Fair enough. I'm glad look healthier," I said and immediately regretted it. What right did I have to comment on her health? On anything about her? I started eating again. She said matter-of-factly, sleeping through the night sometimes. "My therapist says I'm making progress." Therapist. Of course she needed therapy. Because of me. That's good. She looked at me directly for the first time. "Getting help, I mean." "Yeah. Dr. Chen. She doesn't let me make excuses for." Sarah nodded like this made sense to her. "Good, need that." The conversation felt surreal. Polite, careful. Nothing like the easy intimacy we'd once shared. "I should go," she said after another awkward pause. "Sarah, wait." The words tumbled out before I could stop them. "I know I don't have the right to ask, but are okay, really?" She studied my face for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was steady but tired. "I don't trust anyone anymore. I go on dates sometimes, and I spend the whole time looking for signs that they're lying to me. I check phones when people aren't looking. I assume everyone has hidden motives." Each word felt like a physical. I used to believe that if loved someone and treated them well, they'd do the same for. That good people in good relationships didn't betray each other. Taught me that was naive. "Sarah. I'm not saying this to, I'm answering question. Asked if I'm okay. This is what okay looks like now." She held the book she'd been clutching. It was a collection of poems about heartbreak and healing. "I read a lot of poetry now. Helps me make sense of things. There's this one line I keep thinking about. I gave him my only diary, filled with poems written in tears. But when he read the first page, he tore it apart saying another woman's words already belonged to his heart." The words hit me like a physical force. That's exactly what I'd done. She'd given me everything, her whole heart, her complete trust, and I'd torn it apart for someone who meant nothing. "That's what did," she continued. "I gave everything I had, and decided it wasn't enough. That some stranger's attention was worth more than 5 years of my love. I wanted to argue, to explain, to make it less awful somehow. But she was absolutely right. I dream about that night sometimes," she said. "The night told me, in my dreams I see it coming. I check phone earlier, or I come home from my sister's party early, or I just know somehow, and I can stop it, I can save us. But then I wake and, still chose her. Still us away. And I still have to figure out how to exist in a world where someone I loved completely could me that badly." I was crying now. Standing in a bookstore poetry section, crying like a child. I whispered. "I'm so sorry. I know but sorry doesn't fix this. Sorry doesn't give me back my ability to trust. Sorry doesn't erase the year I spent thinking I was the person who was supposed to love me most decided I wasn't enough." She was right. Sorry was just another word that meant nothing. "I have to go," she said. "My cousin is expecting me." "Sarah, I don't." She held her hand. "Whatever about to say don't. We're not friends. We're not anything. We're just two people who used to love each other, until one of us decided to it all down." She walked away without looking back. I stood there in the poetry section, surrounded by books about love and loss, understanding for the first time that some damage can never be repaired. That night, I called Dr. Chen's emergency line. "I saw Sarah today." I told her voicemail. "I thought I was getting better, but I'm not. I'm never going to be better. I destroyed the best in Y. And now she can't trust anyone because of me. How do live with that?" She called me back an hour later. "Live with it by understanding that guilt doesn't help her heal," she said. "Live with it by making sure never anyone else this way. Live with it by becoming someone who could never make those choices again." "But what if I can't? What if this is just who I am? They'll spend alone, and maybe that's what deserve. Her honesty was brutal and necessary. Over the next few months, I into therapy with desperate intensity. Not because I thought I could win Sarah back, but because I couldn't stand being the kind of person who'd someone that deeply. I learned that my cheating wasn't really about Emma, or inadequacy or work stress. It was about entitlement. About believing I deserved more than what I had without doing the work to appreciate what was right in front of me. I learned that love isn't a feeling. It's a choice, a daily decision to put someone else's well-being before own comfort. And I'd failed that choice catastrophically. I learned that trust, once broken, doesn't heal it's more like a piece of paper. Crumpled, can smooth it out, but the creases are permanent. Most importantly, I learned that some mistakes don't get fixed. Some doesn't get healed. Some relationships don't get second chances. And sometimes that's exactly what deserve. 6 months after the bookstore encounter, I heard through mutual friends that Sarah was engaged. His name was David. He was a teacher. Like she'd always wanted to be before she got sidetracked into marketing to support my writing dreams. They'd met in a grief support group, where she'd gone to process losing her father, to kids her to process losing her ability to trust. The engagement photos showed on social media, and I stared at them for hours. Sarah looked happy. Actually happy. Not the performance art she'd been doing since I destroyed her. She was laughing in most of the photos, the kind of uninhibited joy I remembered from our early days together. But it was different now. More careful. More precious. Like someone who'd learned that happiness could disappear without warning, and was grateful for every moment of it. David looked at her the way I used to. Like she was the answer to every question he'd never thought to ask. But there was something else in his expression. Protectiveness. Like he understood he was holding something fragile that had been broken before. They looked perfect together. Like they both understood the value of what they'd found. I felt genuinely happy for her and completely destroyed at the same time. Maya posted a comment that gutted me. So proud of her learning to trust again. David is lucky. But more importantly, he knows it. That was the difference. David knew how lucky he was. I'd taken Sarah's love for granted until it was too late. I wrote Sarah one final message. Not to send, just to process my feelings. I saw engagement photos. Look happy. Really happy. David seems like a good man who understands what he has. I want to know that I'm grateful found someone who deserves. Someone who sees love as the gift it is, not the consolation prize I treated it as. I hope he chooses every single day. I hope he never takes laughter for granted. I hope he protects heart the way I should have. I hope have the most beautiful wedding and the happiest marriage, and all the children used to dream about. I hope forget I ever existed, except as a reminder of how much better deserved to be treated. I'm sorry I couldn't be the man needed me to be. I'm sorry it took losing to learn what love actually means. Be happy. Be so disgustingly, completely happy that it makes everyone around sick with envy. I've earned it. I deleted the message without sending it. Sarah didn't need my blessing or regrets or my elated understanding of what I'd thrown away. The wedding happened 3 months later. I didn't go obviously. Wasn't invited. But Maya posted photos, and Sarah looked radiant. Her dress was simple and elegant. Her smile was genuine. Her eyes were clear and bright, no longer haunted by what I'd done to her. When David her at the altar, she him back like someone who'd remembered how to trust completely. I was genuinely happy for her. And absolutely devastated for. That night, I sat in my apartment alone, surrounded by the I'd built from the ashes of the one. It was smaller now. Quieter, lonelier. But it was honest. I no longer pretended to be better than I was. I no longer took love for granted. I no longer believed I deserved more than I was willing to give. I'd learned too late that Sarah's love had been the most valuable thing I'd ever possessed. That her trust had been a privilege, not a right. That her forgiveness had been a gift I'd never deserved, and would never receive again. I'd learned that some mistakes don't teach how to do better. They teach what capable of losing. I'd learned that the worst part of betraying someone isn't the guilt, or the shame, or even the loneliness. It's understanding exactly what away. And knowing never find anything like it again. 2 years later, I'm still alone. I date sometimes, but it never goes anywhere. Not because I'm not ready, but because no one else is Sarah. No one else looks at me like I'm capable of greatness. No one else laughs at my terrible jokes, or defends me or believes in me when I don't believe in. I had that once. For 5 beautiful years, I had someone who loved me completely, and I destroyed it for 2 hours with a stranger whose name I barely remember. Some people get second chances. Some people learn from their mistakes and find love again. Some people heal and grow and become better. But some people just get to live with the consequences of their choices forever. Some people get to spend their lives, knowing they never wanted it away for nothing. Some people learn that when break something perfect, don't get to put it back together again, just get to remember what it looked like before destroyed it. And sometimes, late at night, when the loneliness feels like it might actually, get to wonder what would have looked like, if been brave enough to choose love over ego. If been smart enough to value what had instead of wanting what thought deserved. If been man enough to keep promises instead of breaking the heart, the only person who ever loved exactly as were. But wondering doesn't change anything. Regret doesn't rewrite history. And sorry doesn't resurrect what killed with own hands. All get is the rest of to remember that once held heaven in hands, and dropped it for